we do have a tension in the system between an NHS that's being asked to focus very strongly on world-class commissioning and an adult social care system that's being asked to focus very strongly on personalisation. And I think this is a genuinely open question about the extent to which it's possible to do both at the same time and the extent to which both those frameworks are compatible. I'm not sure at a national level they are as currently conceived, and I think the trick may well be at a local level trying to find a way of developing a local framework for services with agreed outcomes and an agreed vision that allows you to receive some of the national policy developments and make sense of them in a way that will work for the people that you're tasked with serving. You mentioned the word making sense of, and I think this is really an issue for local leadership and for local sense making to be able to interpret, receive policy and then translate it into action in a way that will work for local people. Because without that, I don't think we have a common language at the moment, and I do worry about the extent to which we can be sufficiently fleet of foot at a local level to hold together the tensions between personalisation and world-class commissioning.
Well, I'd just like to ask John to expand that a bit, because I think the work we're trying to do at world-class commissioning for PCTs is, I think, a valid headquarters function of setting up an approach for local development as distinct from it being an old-fashioned top-down. Now, history may prove it to be fucking complete nonsense, but
It might, David.
but that's the whole point. That in a devolved system, there's still a valid headquarters function, and what is that function? And that part of the work we're doing is working with the service to say if you looked at some of the outcomes and processes we've looked in the World Class Commission, they've been generated from the service. I suppose the other thing, which is also both confusing but could be enabling, is that we have PCTs with a big population approach, but also we've got now the rollout of practice-based commissioning, which isn't just about commissioning, it's about provision as well, which might make it nearer to some of the personalisation for individuals is the opportunity rather than being a clash. But I'd just like you to, John, to say why do you think you feel so negative about our enabling local people?
Concerned is the word I use rather than negative, but it's often been, I've seen it said from platforms that the World Class Commissioning agenda is partly about turning healthcare commissioning into something fit for purpose and in an industrial age. It's about taking previous good practice and industrialising it, if you like. It's a phrase Mark Britnell uses quite a lot. At the same time, as in social care, we're talking about personalisation moving us into a post-industrial age. And I just think there's something interesting in the language and the metaphors that those kind of things create that make me wonder about the extent to which it's possible to do both at the same time. I don't know what Anita or Marianne think about that, but I do think there's a genuine tension in terms of the way that those policies are being interpreted and implemented locally.
If we're talking about real commissioning, that if it isn't adding anything in value in terms of quality, then there's no point in doing it. And the whole commissioning for quality agenda, I think, is moving down. And I absolutely think that corresponds with the personalisation agenda. It's an enabler about making sure you get user care experience locked up with your priorities locked up. And I have to say, in the PCTs, where we're piloting personalised budgets from a health as well as a social care perspective, the storytelling is hugely better. So I think it synthesises brilliantly, actually.
Yeah, I think one of the really encouraging things about the way the debate has been developing in recent years is a recognition that you do need to have things happen at a national level and at a regional level and at a local level, and that there's no one that's right. I mean, in the 10 years that I've been director, a lot of the time it's swung between, everything needs to be done, local authorities need to run the NHS or vice. And it's a nonsense, isn't it? Of course you need to have some things done best at one level or another. But I think the only place where things really truly get synthesised is at the level of the individual. It is around that's how we live our lives, all of us, in our immediate families and then in our immediate communities. And increasingly, I've begun to wonder to what extent we, at a local level, can really expect government to join up beyond a certain amount. How feasible is it? And of course, government needs to support us to join up at a local level, but in the end, we make sense of our lives locally, and I think local authorities that's the job of local authorities, is to be joining up things at a local level for individuals and communities.
For me, personalisation must be the outcome. So I think they come together beautifully. I think the timing is absolutely right for this. Because if we're not about providing good quality services in the best possible way, driven really and led by service users. And if that isn't personal, what is it? If world-class commissioning doesn't do that, it will fail, in my view.
I don't think commissioning is bedded down in local government any more than the NHS, and people talk about what commissioning is, but actually in local government there's been a lot of traditional patterns that have been followed as well, and I don't think it's been as creative. It's starting to be. But I was thinking, you know, there's this change in the way money's going to be used. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about when I left Richmond was that, you know, we're giving out £250,000 a month to service users, and the way it was working in Richmond was 70% of the money given out in personal budgets was actually being taken as direct payments. So the dynamic of the use of money for commissioning was changing very quickly. So in local authorities, if that continues, the role of commissioning is actually quite different.
And the real danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater by saying, well, actually everybody's going to have an individual budget and they can all have it, you end up with 10 different providers in an extra care scheme, whereas actually maybe personalisation there is about the service users being able to choose their care provider, control the monitoring of quality. So to be able to get providers and service users actually working together for their solutions, and the commissioner role actually is to push that process. So commissioning is about enabling those parties to determine the outcomes and find the right way forward. It is a very different dynamic, I think, from the one which exists at the moment.
Given how the providers need to think through what services need to be there for that ageing society, it's how we make those that are going to be ageing, myself included, aware of what is possible rather than traditional care. So it is about shaping the market, but shaping the market based on information and participation from those who aren't presently engaged. And I do think we need to think that through, because it's not enough just to say, well, the local authority has to give information, support and advice, because large proportions of the population don't see us as the pertinent people to give it.
One of my favourite words at the minute is alignment, and I think there's a tremendously important job that David and myself and John and others need to do within the department about aligning this stuff and making sure we've got it. But my other favourite word at the minute is duality. Why are we pausing this as it's world-class commissioning or personalisation? Why are we setting this up? Because it's both, and we need to do both. And I don't see these as being intellectually inherent contradictions in what we're doing.
I believe that there's a great deal more that can be done with communities. I know that's true. And I know that there's a relationship between that and the way that a local authority behaves in terms of the commissioning services that it organises. I happen to live in Coventry. I've seen what's possible in terms of completely transforming residential care. I started my life as a home manager in Coventry Social Services. That's been transformed with one or two providers with a completely different way of organising things. So I know it's possible. But it's the exception rather than the norm.
It can't just be the NHS and social care in the room. I know that there are people round this table who really are meaning it when they say, let's not just think we're there for the NHS or for our roles, we're there for the people, it's their money. It's quite difficult to bear that in mind. And going back to what you said about user-controlled organisations, we hive ourselves off round the table, supporting those different organisations and people in different roles have to be people as members of the public and service users. They're the lever that will really make it happen, and especially they will make it happen if we want to have an approach, NHS or social care, which is personalisation at its best. So I think that we must be talking about an inclusive approach to commissioning, where we, that statement of the Disabled People's Movement, nothing about us without us, must be broadened out, not devalued, but broadened out to include all those people, present or for the future, people as constituents, people as members of the public using services, long-term users of services, whatever, in there saying it's for us too, and we can do that.